All right, Ethan, I'll let you take it away and you can share your screen.
Perfect.
Well done.
My screen.
Yep.
All right, awesome. Well, hi everyone. My name is Ethan Turer. I just changed my virtual background, by the way, so you can connect with me after this talk. I have all my socials. So today we're talking about blockchain and cryptocurrency and just everything in between. I feel like I get a lot of questions as like an author in this space. And I think we just start in the basics. And if you have any questions, like write them down or add them in the chat so that at the end of this talk, we can address those and keep this conversation going. Because it's going to be like drinking out of a fire hose. It's going to be a lot, but we're going to get through it together. So here we go. So who am I? Great question. Why are you listening to me? Like I'm this 25-year-old, pretty new out of college. I graduated from Cal Poly. I studied business entrepreneurship, didn't take any classes in cryptocurrency, didn't learn about cryptocurrency in school. Just a generally curious person. So I had an internship out of college, and that was my first exposure to cryptocurrency, where I went down that rabbit hole. I started learning about it, becoming fascinated with the technology. And then during the pandemic, I decided to write a book about this idea I had for a new cryptocurrency. That book is called The Next Gold Rush, The Future of Investing in People. You see on the bottom right is a mock-up of the potential cover of that book. You guys are one of the first to see this, actually. I haven't shared this with anyone yet, so that's pretty exciting. All right, what is it? What is cryptocurrency? So before I get into it, I'm just going to, at a high level, explain there are thousands of cryptocurrencies. Like you may have heard of some of them, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, some of the ones that make mainstream, like Dogecoin. Like you might have like heard about it, but you might not have understand what it is. But just from a high level perspective, there's so many cryptocurrencies. But the first cryptocurrency that was ever created, that was Bitcoin. Bitcoin was created by Satoshi Nakamoto, and Satoshi Nakamoto is an alias. We don't know if it's a guy or girl, a group of people. It's a pseudonym. But this Satoshi Nakamoto person or persons created Bitcoin, released the white paper that explains what Bitcoin is in 2008. And then the first Bitcoin was mined and like available to the public in 2009. So this is a relatively new uh, industry. Like Bitcoin is the first one. It was created in 2008, and it's 2021 now. So it hasn't even been that long. It's been like not even 2 decades yet, and it's already like becoming very popular. And so now that you understand that Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency, what is a cryptocurrency, right? Cryptocurrency is a digital form of currency, right? So basically, we already use currencies in a digital form, like the US dollar, right? If you use a credit card, that's pretty digital. Like you're not interacting with cash. You don't even need to use cash anymore. You could use a wire transfer. Like those are all digital currencies, but Bitcoin is a decentralized digital currency. So there isn't one entity that's controlling Bitcoin. It's controlled by a network of computers. So that's going to be really important. I'm going to explain more of that later. But just remember that what makes Bitcoin different is that it's decentralized. So it's not controlled by one entity like a bank or a government. So then what is like blockchain technology? Like you may have heard of blockchain, you may have heard of Bitcoin, you may have heard of cryptocurrency. They're all interconnected. It's all like one stream of consciousness. Basically, blockchain technology is the technology that powers Bitcoin and all cryptocurrencies. So another way to think about it is like when you use a website, right? The website you're using is powered by code, right? Maybe it's using HTML or some other coding language. That coding language is essentially what blockchain technology is. So just remember that Bitcoin is powered by blockchain technology. I'll explain how blockchain technology works later. And then another way to think about it, if you're still not getting it, is that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are decentralized ledger technology. So ledgers are just a record of transactions, right? If you're an accounting person, that's basically all you're doing for your company is keeping track of every transaction that happens in your company. Bitcoin does this, but it's the network that is keeping track. There's a decentralized network that is keeping a ledger of everything that's happening for this cryptocurrency. So hopefully I'm explaining these terms. If you're not getting it, I'm happy to explain it in other ways later at the end of the presentation. The last term I want to explain is smart contracts. So Bitcoin doesn't have smart contracts, but Ethereum, which is the number two cryptocurrency in the whole like the whole industry, it's run by smart contracts, which is basically a smarter way of coding a cryptocurrency, which makes it more flexible to do things like create applications. So there's things like decentralized applications, which are run on the Ethereum network. So I know it's a lot I've thrown at you. I will happily explain it more in detail, but those are like the main terms I wanted to explain first. Why does it matter? Like, why are we even having this conversation? It matters because we live in a like predominantly centralized society. Basically, everything we do is like controlled by entities like the government, right? The government and the Federal Reserve, they control the US dollar. Corporations control data servers like Amazon, basically control the internet. Like, basically, we have everything that we use is used in a centralized way. And so finally, with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, we're able to decentralize everything that exists on the internet. Anything you can imagine that's digital could be decentralized, and that just opens up a plethora of opportunity. It's like crazy. It's like the rebirth of the internet because of cryptocurrency. So that's why it matters. It's like Web 3.0, where this new exciting phase of the internet and cryptocurrency is, leading the charge in that new phase. All right, how does it work? So here's this helpful graphic. I hope a lot of people are visual learners. I put a lot of graphics in this presentation. Basically, it's like 5 steps. The first step is that you initiate a transaction, right? I want to use Bitcoin to pay for something, let's say. So that's the first step, is that you're saying, okay, I want to send my Bitcoin to another wallet. And then the second step is that and a node is another word for like a computer that's part of the network. A node will, decide to validate that transaction. So it begins that process. That validation process is happening. And then, the computers or nodes that are validating it, they're getting rewarded in the form of a payment also, or a gas fee. And so that gas fee is paying them. So they get a reward of Bitcoin and they're getting paid by the person initiating the transaction. So that's step three, you get the mining. And then the block, that transaction is now a block because it's been verified. And that block is now added to the chain. And so you have a chain of transactions that have been verified. And that is basically what the blockchain is. It's just a chain of blocks that have been verified by a network of nodes. And now that transaction is complete. And so you have the new form of the blockchain. And now you just repeat that process. That's essentially what happens behind the scenes of a cryptocurrency. Is it a fad? So I've gotten this question a lot because, it's the internet. There's a lot of hype. You don't know if something is going to stay forever or if it's just trendy right now. And so I put here that it kind of is and it kind of isn't. Like it just depends on like what part of this you're looking at. So for instance, I think NFTs are a good example of like no way like this graphic at the bottom, it's a collage of images, right? And it was sold for $69 million. I don't think that is sustainable. I think that is just basically a hype thing. Like NFTs are popular, you can make a lot of money off of them, and that's what happened in this specific scenario. At the top is a picture of crypto kitties, which are a longer form example of NFTs. And so I know I said NFT. I'm gonna explain what that is because that's one more term which I haven't explained. So NFT stands for non-fungible token. So non-fungible basically means unique, right? So if you're creating a unique token, that's something that can only be created that one time, and it's very um, essential to a digital environment to be able to track a unique digital asset. So that's what NFTs are. They're just unique digital assets that you can track the ownership of on a blockchain. Um, Hopefully that makes sense. If not, I'll explain that later too. But the reason like Bitcoin is fungible is that if you have a Bitcoin and someone else has a Bitcoin, they're interchangeable. It's not really unique. They're just one Bitcoin is the same as another Bitcoin. But if I have one NFT, like a picture of art, a digital art, it doesn't exchange like one to one for other pieces of art. So hopefully that makes sense to what NFTs are. Is it illegal? Is it regulated? So I have an image here of a the Wild West of crypto. Basically, what's happening is we're in this new era, right? Like a new frontier of cryptocurrency, and so there's a lot of things that are happening that maybe aren't the most. It's not like everyone's an honest actor. So I'm not. I don't want to like say that this industry is so amazing that there's nothing wrong with it. There are things that could be improved, just like any new industry, and cryptocurrency is not exempt from that. There's examples of like ICOs, which is a initial coin offering, basically like an initial public offering, but for a smaller startup, cryptocurrency startup. If they want to raise money through cryptocurrency, they can do that, but then the founders could take that money and run with it. And that's actually happened. And so the SEC has had to come in and like fine them, basically say that you have to shut down your cryptocurrency. Like that's happened. So there is some regulation, but for the most part, it's really just the Wild West. Like no one, there isn't like a law that I could point to, but like this is what's happening. This is like what you have to do. So that being said, it's legal, like technology is legal, but it's also independent of government. So it's kind of like in this weird gray area, if that makes sense. I can't really give you a straight answer, but if you have more questions about that, I'm happy to talk about it. Should I invest? So this is probably one of the most important questions. I'm not a financial advisor, so my answer is don't listen to me. But since you're asking me, I'll give you the best answer I can, which is not financial advice. Basically, don't invest anything you're not willing to lose, and or too much that you can't sleep at night. I actually stole that advice from another friend of mine who is a active blockchain investor. So it's basically be prepared to lose anything. The Bitcoin price is very volatile. It could go down to like next to zero, and that would be completely expected because we're in this new area, and even though everyone wants it to go up, the price of Bitcoin, that's never a guarantee. It has repeatedly fallen to half its value. So it's like peaked at $60,000 and then fallen to 30,000. Are you able to stomach that price fluctuations? Like most people can't. And so I put here DCA, dollar cost averaging. I have a picture of it. If you just like repeatedly invest like the same amount in a specific interval, you're better off investing like and getting the average of all the ups and downs. And so that's like the best advice I can give you if you are new to this and willing to or looking to invest. Also, PayPal like has a way for you to invest in cryptocurrency now. Coinbase, which is a publicly traded company, so they are regulated by the SEC. They're another great resource for people who want to be able to invest in cryptocurrency but may not know where to start. So I just wanted to throw those resources out there. There's a lot more information, but this is like the basic level of investing knowledge. Lastly, okay, so my book is called The Next Gold Rush. So what is the next gold rush? So what I wrote my book about is basically this idea that people will be able to create their own cryptocurrencies in the future. So we've had, governments be able to create their own currency like the US dollar. And now with companies can create their own currency with an ICO. So companies can have their own currency. And so it makes sense that the next evolution of cryptocurrency and currency in general is people being able to create their own coin. So the example I have here is Elon Musk coin. Wouldn't it be awesome if you're able to invest in Elon Musk before he created SpaceX, before he created Tesla, like back when he was working at PayPal or when he created X.com, like to be able to invest in the person and then be able to reap the reward of that entrepreneur or anyone really who has future success. I think that's a really awesome opportunity that is still in the very early stages of. So that's what I wrote my book about. And That's what I'm excited to hopefully see in the future. So that's my presentation. Hopefully you guys learned a lot. I'm open to any questions you guys have. Thank you.
Well done, Ethan. All right, so you guys will have to unmute yourself to ask some questions and see if you can make sense of this taste of Bitcoin, which you're probably not any more reassured about all of it than you were at the start. And rule one is you shouldn't invest in things you don't understand, right? Have you, Ethan, personally invested in Bitcoin or any of the cryptos? And how has your experience been with all that?
So my investment strategy is more long-term. So I don't do like day trading or anything like that. I follow that dollar cost strategy, dollar cost averaging strategy that I talked about. So I have a specific amount that I invest every month into Bitcoin, and then I move that money into like a hardware wallet. So it's very secure and offline. I think that's the safest way that you can invest in cryptocurrency, but I didn't talk about wallets in this presentation.
But you can convert that to actual dollars whenever you want, right?
Yeah, it's very liquid. There are exchanges. So if you were to go like overseas to London, you could go to an exchange and exchange your US dollar for the pound, or the US dollar for the euro. That exists online for cryptocurrency right now. You can exchange the US dollar for Bitcoin or Ethereum or any other cryptocurrency that you want to buy.
But isn't that what's being called in question right now as to whether that's legitimate? I mean, I can go in my basement and print $100 bills too. I can go to jail for taking them outside my room, but I mean, you say like anybody can create a cryptocurrency, which I guess technically is correct, but where does a cryptocurrency get its value? Where did Bitcoin get its value from?
Yeah, so it started off like Bitcoin in 2008 was like worth less than a penny. So it was basically worth nothing when it started. Eventually what happened is that the supply, so I didn't explain this in the presentation, but there are only 21 million Bitcoins that will ever exist. There's like a cap on the supply. And so the scarcity of Bitcoin, along with the demand of it, is what gives Bitcoin its value. So the more people that are wanting to buy Bitcoin, the more the price of Bitcoin is driven up. So hopefully that explains that. There's another example of halving that happens. It's deflationary. That's another reason why Bitcoin goes up in price every 4 years. But yeah, do I need to explain that? I probably should explain that better. So here we go. So there's this basically when a new Bitcoin is created, because I said there's limited supply.
And how's a new Bitcoin created?
Right. So when I remember I explained that mining process of like how it works.
Okay. And I've heard there's kids out there mining Bitcoin.
Right. So when you're mining Bitcoin, you're basically processing a very hard cryptographic algorithm. And then when you solve it, the reward for all that processing power that is taking place is Bitcoin. So the mining reward is, I think, like 6.25 Bitcoin or something like that. So it's a lot of money if like Bitcoin is worth, $45,000 right now. That's the reward, and that's how new Bitcoin are created, is through that mining process.
I have a question. Hi, my name's Irene. I've heard a lot about the massive computer processing power required and what a really big energy drain this is and pollution that's involved. Can you address that?
Yeah, great point. So it is take a lot of energy. Like I said, the cryptographic, it's like solving that, it takes a lot of computation power. And so that computation power is happening at every node. So every person is responsible for the power that they're using. So some forms of the power, like, if you're using renewable energy to process, mining or to mine, then it's actually good for the environment. But I think what's happening is that because it's decentralized, you can't point to one person and be like, your you know, using all this energy. And so it's just hard to regulate because it's decentralized. So what is happening is people are looking at the total volume of the computation that's being used, and they're saying, oh my gosh, there's, look at all this energy that's being used to mine Bitcoin. But then what's happening is that it's not like there's anyone really being held accountable for that power, because every person, every node is responsible for it. So some people may have the resources for it to be renewable, and maybe it's not bad for the environment, but others may be using coal and gas, and who knows. But it's really up to the network and each individual to use that power. And so that's why you have this problem, is that everyone really has their own choice as to where the power is coming from. And so at a macro level, Bitcoin is using a lot of energy, right? A lot more than like some countries. But if you compare Bitcoin energy consumption to like fiat currency, like how much banks use to store, you know, money in their data servers, it's actually not that bad. Like it's pretty comparable at like a industry level. So it's hard because I think it's an easy point to say like Bitcoin is bad because it's bad for the environment, but then also like can't you say the same thing about the US dollar? Like why is no one having that conversation as well? So it's hard because I can't say one person is being bad. It's kind of like the network, and the network is incentivized to create cheap energy, use cheap energy because it costs them less and they get more rewards. So it's more profitable. So hopefully that makes sense. It's very complicated, so I'm trying to like explain it the best I can, but yeah. Does that make sense, Irene?
It's an interesting quandary. I had no idea. I mean, how much energy does it actually take to produce a Bitcoin?
Yeah, well, it keeps going up because the cryptographic puzzles that you have to solve become more and more complex, which require more and more energy to solve. So the other thing, like here's like if you take a step back, gold, right, is very energy consuming. You have to literally dig earth out of the ground to mine gold, right, which is a physical asset. And so if you're comparing like energy consumption to value, then Bitcoin is very valuable because you're using a lot of energy to create Bitcoin. So it's kind of like the same. I feel like the framing is off also, if that makes sense. Because like you kind of need to consume energy in order to create value. Like those two concepts are very much connected in society.
Yeah.
Ethan, can you maybe explain what it means to mine a Bitcoin? So if I want to do this, what do I have to do?
Yeah, so when Bitcoin was, you know, more accessible, like early adopters, like back in 2010, you could download a program like on a gaming computer, like a laptop or PC. You could download a program and mine it from there. But because of the energy required and the specific like the specs in order to mine Bitcoin, you actually have to invest a lot into specific Bitcoin mining rigs. And so it's really not accessible anymore, Bitcoin to mining. Like I can't mine Bitcoin from my computers. You really need like a really big data warehouse. Like China has like a farm, like a data farm where they do most of the Bitcoin mining. So if you wanted to mine something, I would say don't mine Bitcoin, choose a different cryptocurrency that is like not as expensive to get started in. But to answer your question, you need specific processors, like a, you know, gaming processor that can run the energy required to solve these puzzles. And so it's just it takes a lot is what I'm saying. I don't have like a straight answer for you. I haven't done this myself, so I'm kind of just telling you from what I've researched.
Well, as Bitcoin calculations go on, those keys become tougher and tougher to get to, as I understand it. And so it's now down to a point where it takes tons and tons of calculations, where the early Bitcoins were, you know, to be done on a PC. Now you've got to have a farm doing it, and the Chinese are doing it with coal-fired plants. So
And that's a perfect example of like the energy consumption thing. Like,
yeah.
who's going to tell China to be more energy efficient? Like, I don't think I can, or anyone in the US. So,
But other currencies like the US currency, I mean, that's backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. Now you can like or dislike that statement, but that's the way the Constitution says it. And I think that's the argument that Bitcoin, is it legal or is it counterfeit? I mean,
So you had mentioned that earlier, and I had a thought about that. It's not counterfeit because it's not pretending to be the US dollar. If you go to, like, on vacation to Costa Rica and you go to pay for something, they'll say, do you want to pay for this in local currency or do you want to pay in dollars? Well, US dollars are not the official currency in Costa Rica, but you can pretty much use it to buy anything you want. So it doesn't have to be, there's nothing unlegal or illegal about Bitcoin. It's nothing extra legal about it. You're just paying with a currency that's not the official currency. It's nothing wrong with it at all.
I mean,
And some
legality
people-
is, sorry, what were you gonna say, Brian?
I just say some people prefer to get paid in Bitcoin. I mean, if people know how to pay you in Bitcoin, you potentially are getting paid for something that's going to be far more valuable than the US dollar.
I could just as easily say, I want to buy a dozen eggs from you and I'm going to pay you with a half dozen avocados. Nothing wrong with that, as long as we both agree, right?
Depending
Hey,
on
come
value,
on. Who
exactly.
doesn't
I
love
like,
avocados?
yes.
But the scarcity of Bitcoin is what will drive it, the value of it over time.
but the IRS would say those avocados are taxable.
Depends on how
That's
many.
cryptocurrency. The other point I wanted to make, Laura, about legality is that every municipality has their own decision on whether crypto is legal or not. Right? India actually banned Bitcoin, so it is illegal in India to do anything with Bitcoin. I think in other parts of Europe, it's very much legal. It's like actually something that's very accepted there. So it kind of depends where you are. I think the US is kind of going back and forth. Like, they don't see it as a threat yet. But the bigger Bitcoin gets, the more threatening I think it will be to governments, and the more this legality question will come into play, because governments choose what's legal and what's not.
Well, especially if China's going to get all the Bitcoins, government, US is going to be like, well, we're not going to allow it in our country.
Well, there was a time in our history where different states and different banks even printed their own money, and that's not legal anymore, and hasn't been for 100 years.
Right.
But also, can you talk about the use of the Bitcoin technologies in the area of, let's say, less than perfect transactions? Meaning, I understand that it's used for buying things just like you use cash to buy things when you don't want a record of where it came from or who paid for it. That it has that same sort of attribute. So it's used for illegal transactions, buying drugs, that type of stuff.
Right. I mean, in the beginning, that's what it was like. Infamous was like Bitcoin was like only for drug money, right? Like, it was for money laundering. I think that's not as much the case anymore. I think that's like 2% of all transactions in Bitcoin are like those less than, I forget the terminologies, but my answer to that question is that you need, like, if you wanted to transact in like a Coinbase, you have to verify your identity, right? There are certain things, hurdles of like identification, like making sure that the wallet that you're using is connected to a person, that make it very hard for someone to like, launder money in cryptocurrency. I think in the beginning, when there weren't those entities like Coinbase or PayPal that were tracking where all of this money is going in this new economy, I think that's where you had more opportunities for people to move money around like that. But that being said, I think it's a lot easier to, move cash around. Like, no one when I give like a $20 bill to someone, no one's like checking my identity. Like I think it's a lot easier to do that with like bad, like so my framing is basically like those people are just gonna go with the opportunity that's the easiest, like the most convenient for them. So hopefully cryptocurrency becomes more regulated, and then it becomes harder to do those like money laundering type things, and you have less of that. But it's kind of like anything goes right now. So I can't really speak to like exactly what's happening in the whole network, but I think overall it's more like above board transactions.
If I could just add a quick comment to that. Remember that Bitcoin works on a decentralized public ledger. Every transaction is traceable. I mean, to use Bitcoin for nefarious means is fairly idiotic. I mean, because everything is viewable by the public. If you want to use a privacy token, Monero, that's something different.
Right. That's a great point, Jeff. Basically that ledger that I was talking about that records transactions on the blockchain, that whole thing, like that's happening for every transaction. So even the transactions that are like, not great, like money laundering type of things, those are being recorded. Basically what's being recorded, like if you want to get into the details, is that it's a wallet address. And so the wallet address may not be connected to a person's identity, which is where you can kind of get away with things. But I think the more that people's wallets are connected to their identity, it will be less common that you have like, opportunities to do bad things in this space. Did anyone else have any questions? I know there's a lot of investing stuff I usually get that I like barely touched on. Did anyone else have any like investing style or type questions?
So kind
When
of
did you
along
buy
those
your-
lines, this isn't, oh, sorry, Brian, did you want?
No, I
Can I
just,
ask-
when did you buy your first Bitcoin, Ethan? I was just curious.
In 2000, I think it was 2018, I bought my first Bitcoin. It wasn't a whole Bitcoin because Bitcoin's
It was too expensive by then.
Yeah.
I remember like 10 years ago, QuickBooks Online allowed you to basically take payment in Bitcoin, but I didn't have anybody that paid me that way. I missed an opportunity. Sorry, Laura, go ahead.
That's all right. This is not really a question. So Ethan, this isn't to put you on the spot, but you were talking about investing, right? So whenever I hear about Bitcoin, and we talk about, investing Bitcoin, mining Bitcoin, making money on Bitcoin. And the one thing that I'm always wondering is, what about just using Bitcoin? People choose to use it. Like, there were questions earlier about, do we want, is Bitcoin something we want to use if we're doing something illegal? You didn't hear that, by the way. What is the advantage to any of us of using Bitcoin over using the US dollar? Or what if we don't care about making money on it, we just want to use it as a currency?
Right. So the term for that is like medium of exchange, right? So for Bitcoin, have you heard of the Bitcoin pizza? It's like a fun story. The first medium, like the first example of Bitcoin being used to buy an actual good was
No.
Sorry, was that Jeff? All right, I'll go back. So it was back in 2010. His name is I think it was Jeffrey Haslow or something like that. I may be getting his name wrong. But he decided he wanted to spend I forget how many Bitcoin it was, but it was like 10,000 Bitcoin or something crazy like that. At the time, Bitcoin was only worth, it was 2010, so it was like worth pennies, like less than $1. And so he paid someone in Bitcoin to buy him a pizza and send it to his home. So he got 2 Domino's pizzas, and those pizzas today would be worth millions and millions of dollars, like something like over $100 million, something crazy. And so the question becomes, is Bitcoin a good medium of exchange if once you spend it, you're like losing future value by not storing it? Like, is Bitcoin a better store of value where if you just hold on to it, it's going to be worth a lot more? And I think that's the question that is like this big dilemma that's happening, because I think Bitcoin's a better store of value right now. I don't want to spend Bitcoin, to buy my book or something like that, because once I do that, I'm basically losing future investment opportunity. So
What do you say?
Um,
There's going to be 21 million Bitcoins in existence ever? And
Right.
how many have been mined today?
it's over 18 million.
So it's getting close to
You're
being,
talking about billion, not million, right?
No, it's million with an M. Yeah. So it's a little over 18 million now. What happens is people lose their money. So it's actually not 18 million. The amount of active Bitcoin is actually a lot less than 18 million. So it's actually even more scarce than that. And then every time, every 4 years or so, when the reward of mining Bitcoin is halved, less Bitcoin are rewarded to the miners. So right now, remember I said it was like 6. It will eventually be like less than 1 Bitcoin being rewarded to every miner. So that means less Bitcoin will be created in the network over time. So I think someone mapped out that the last Bitcoin mined will be in like 2,140. Like we won't be alive to see it because it's like a logarithmic scale. Like it'll just be like fractions of Bitcoin will be mined, and it'll be, either super valuable or not. But I won't be alive to know. So
you better hope before you die that the people you plan to leave your money to know how to get to your Bitcoins.
it's actually a big problem right now. People like lose their wallets, they forget their passwords, and then it's just all this Bitcoin is just lost forever because no one else can get it from them. Like, so that's what I meant. It's
like losing a lottery ticket.
Yeah, pretty much. Anyways, did anyone else have any other than Bitcoin? Were there any other questions? There are a lot of cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin has been like the primary one we've been talking about. Anyone else have questions?
This is the chance to ask what you were afraid to know, what you were afraid to ask.
Yeah, don't worry about us recording you. Like, no one's gonna see this.
I can even stop the recording if you feel uncomfortable to ask that question, but I don't know I don't know what to do. I'm going to buy some Bitcoin shares. If you think China is going to be ruling the world in 20, 50 years, seems like that's a safer bet to own some currency and what China seems to be dominating. I'm wondering, do you have no way of knowing what percentage of Bitcoins exist in what country, right? It's pretty much just anonymous, like you don't know.
I mean, I don't know off the top of my head, but I feel like you could look it up. Yeah, it's a good question.
I would just say the last thing is curious, your book, and I am interested in it because you're talking about the fact that people are going to create their own coins. Maybe just say a little bit about that, because it sounds like that's a little bit more of sort of a futuristic view. There's not a lot of like hard data to support that, but this is something that you anticipate. So maybe just end it talking a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So my big idea, I had actually back in 2018 when I around the time I was buying Bitcoin for the first time, I had this big idea. I was like, I'm working with all these entrepreneurs. Why can't I invest in them? Right? Like, why do I have to invest in their startup, which is very likely to fail because 90% of startups fail. I should just be able to invest in the entrepreneur behind the startup. And I was thinking, I was beginning to learn about cryptocurrency. And so the idea was like merging the two, like an entrepreneur should be able to create their own coin. And so that idea actually snowballed into this much bigger idea that anybody could create their own coin once you were able to do that in cryptocurrency. So my favorite application of this idea actually is influencers and followers. So right now we have social media, which is like this really new 21st century thing where everyone's following each other. Everyone's trying to be a content creator, but our economy really doesn't capture the value that's being created by these influencers. And then the followers, like, we're just trying to monetize that relationship. And so you have companies like Facebook that are like basically capturing most of the value of the influencer and follower relationship. And so what my idea would basically do is allow the follower to invest in the influencer, right? So let's just take, for an example, I created my own currency, Ethan coin. Everyone here would be able to buy Ethan coin. And so in doing so, you would maybe like get to experience, the success of my future startups or the next book I write or whatever I do in my life. If I have an appreciation and value of my life, that will be captured in the coin, and then you'll see that investment in return. And so it's kind of like thinking about it like a stock market for people. Instead of companies you're investing in people who will appreciate and value via their cryptocurrency.
Very cool. I like that. I like that a lot. You could invest in your children, like actually get some guarantee that you'll get some of that investment back.
Exactly. Like one of the things I read in my book was that a lot of parents pay for their kids' college education, but what if you could just invest in their coin, and then that student would be able to pay for their college via their coin instead of it being like a donation to the student where you don't really see a return. You're basically investing in them early on into their education, which will lead to other future opportunities for you as a parent. So I think that's like a good hypothetical scenario which hasn't existed yet, that I'm excited to see what happens.
Well, and you wonder how often funding is the obstacle that people run into. I mean, probably quite frequently that is the obstacle. So you're giving people an opportunity to, I mean, we're doing it in some ways with the crowdsourcing and the Patreon, for creators, things like that.
Yeah, so that's a good example because Patreon, even crowdfunding, I did crowdfunding for my book. My book, in return for like paying $40 for my perk, you get like a copy of the book. But if you could buy like my coin or for Patreon, for example, you're basically it's a subscription. So you're not really seeing a return. You're getting like something in return, like a content, but it's not an investment based relationship. It's a donation based or a subscription based relationship. And so being able to take the internet as it exists today, basically turn everything into an investment model, could actually be very interesting for how we could collaborate together, like as a society. I feel like has a lot of like exponential opportunity for every person. So yeah, I'm just really excited about it, and so that's why I wrote a book about the idea.
Cool. All right. Well, we've definitely gone a little over. As the usual plan. Any last questions for Ethan? Any announcements? I always like to put that out there. We're going to send out a survey along with a link to Ethan's replay of this, which we're going to ask you about some topics that you guys are interested in that we maybe haven't covered in the past. So this actually, Ethan, was a popular topic. I know it's come up on more than one occasion. We had a great turnout tonight. It's evidenced by the fact that this is a hot topic. So I think it's great that you're diving in it really fairly early in your career into something that, you're going deep and becoming an expert. So congrats to you.
Right. Thank you for having me. And I'll just end with, I have like the links to everything. If you want to connect with me after this, if you have more questions, I'm trying to be as very accessible as possible. Also, my book is available on Amazon at the end of the month. So I don't exactly.
Did you do a pre-sale or not on Amazon?
It won't be available at all on Amazon until the end of August. I did a pre-order campaign on Indiegogo, but that's over.
Closed.
Yeah,
I saw that. Good work. All right, you guys. Well, I really appreciate it. And Ethan, great job. And like I said, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.